All right. Welcome to my talk, Eclipse Diagram Editors. My name is Jan Köhnlein. I'm from Germany. This is why I start in time. And in order not to keep you away from lunch too long. So I hope it's not that bad that I'm between you and your lunch. Bear with me. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do in my spare time, or what's my vision on diagram editing. And I have quite a background in creating diagram editors with the Eclipse technologies. OK, that doesn't work. Doesn't matter. Do that by hand. Doesn't work either. It crashed. That's cool. I have a live demo. Try again. Ah, OK. So running high-risk here is all live demo. So you may know some of these frameworks. Who of you has built diagram editors with Eclipse? GF, GMF, Graffiti, Serious? OK, so quite a few. And well, this is the Eclipse universe of diagram editing. So everything's kind of orbiting around GEF, because that's the base technology under each of these frameworks. And I built quite a few diagram editors with these things. And what's happening usually when you're in a customer project is this. So customer comes and says, I want a diagram editor, and you start looking for a framework to help you. Why do we do that? Frameworks are designed for us developers in order to provide us high-level abstractions. That means creating a diagram editor is an enormous task. If you have done that, you know there's a lot of things to consider. And you want to look for something that facilitates that. So you need some abstraction, like in GMF you have these models, in GMF tooling, or in Graffiti you have a service-oriented pattern on top of everything. OK, these high-level abstractions, these are the key for you in order to get the maximum number of features with minimum effort. Because based on that, you just program your editor on these high-level abstractions. And then everything is like generated or inferred or comes by default. So you get a lot of features for little effort, because you're on a high level of abstraction. But there's the cost of that. And the cost is that you can only provide these high level abstractions if you unify your use cases. So if you're just targeting specific use cases, only then you can go generic and create a framework around that to facilitate this case. What does it mean? That means that you get kind of standard behavior out of your diagram editor. And standard in this case means JAF behavior that's like 12 years old or 10 years old now. And rendering issues, because you inherit them from JAF. If you don't believe me, read my blog. I don't want to rant on JAF too much here. So this is your approach as a developer to building a diagram editor. But what the user wants is he wants a product that's designed for him. And that should be a custom solution designed for his specific use case. It should be usable, so it doesn't care about high-level abstraction. It should be usable as hell, so it should be fun to work with. It should match the specific use case of that user. And really, when it comes to graphical editors, every customer I had was an expert. Okay? It's not with all the other tooling I built. But graphical editors, everyone has an opinion how that should work. And it's completely different in each use case. So it's not the generic use case. It doesn't exist. You always have to customize. And you have to customize behavior. And that is very hard to do with a framework. The user wants it to be fun to use. It should be haptic behavior, like a good user experience. And of course, it wants good visuals, OK? Should look good. I mean, diagrams are made for humans, not for computers. It's for us to look at them, and if they look crappy, you don't want that. So if you compare these two, there's a certain mismatch, you see? So it seems like the framework is not really doing a good job for the user. So from a user's perspective, you shouldn't use a framework, because there's nothing to generify. There's nothing to abstract, because it's all specific. But coding everything from scratch doesn't seem to be an option for you, because that's far too expensive. All right? So this is the mismatch we face. And well, then I built all of these editors, and I kind of live with that. I see, OK, this is what we have in Eclipse. I mean, I have to take it. I don't have to like everything I do. I was kind of depressed until I saw a talk by Gerrit Grunwald that was in December 2012 about JavaFX. And I was like, okay, this is how a rendering framework could look like. It has very clear abstractions. It has a good Java API. It has hardware acceleration. It has everything you want to have. But, of course, it is not a diagram framework. It's a rendering framework. So if you compare it to Eclipse technology, maybe this is on the level of Draw2D or even SWT. And it's kind of complicated to program against that because we're using Java. You know, what's the problem with Java? Java is very verbose. When you do UI programming, what you really do is you're creating trees of widgets, usually. I mean, have you done any UI programming with SWT? Who does? Who did? Okay, you create a tree of widgets, like a sash with a component, a container, and a button in it, and all that stuff. So it's all a tree. But if you write Java code, you don't see the tree. You just see a list of statements that construct a tree, but you don't see the tree. So debugging that may be pretty hard if you want to find the container of something. And you have to write all these setters and getters, and it's no good way to really make good APIs with Java. Okay, so this is a bit of a plug. I'm a committer to Xtend, this one. So life's too short to code in Java. Xtend is a programming language, also hosted at Eclipse, all open source. It compiles to Java code, but it offers you programming abstractions that really make your life easier and allow you to write much more precise code. And I'm using that all over the place for what I did in the following, so this is entirely based on Xtend. And we have a look later on a bit in the code in order to illustrate a bit why I think that really cuts to take a different programming language to use. So marrying these two things makes me very, very productive, okay? And that puts me in the position to really think about writing my own diagram editor from scratch or my own framework from scratch. And this is what I did, mostly in my spare time, and this is what I'm going to demonstrate you in the following. It's my spare time project, so I can start on the green field. It's like every developer likes that, okay? There's nothing, I have all the possibilities. So I decided to do everything differently. So what you see may not be the perfect solution for everybody, but I tried a lot, I experimented. And I experimented especially with usability issues. With the usability issues I really see in Eclipse diagram editing frameworks. So here we go, that's my demo. Second part. Basic usability issues. So what you see is a diagram. It's kind of gray. Why is it gray? I'm pretty bad at choosing colors. Okay, I'm not a designer, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't care about usability. I heard exactly that sentence in another talk. I was kind of, yeah, exactly. This is how it is. So changing colors is easy, but if I change the colors to rainbow-like fashion, everyone is annoyed, and that doesn't look good. So we're living with gray colors, and it's not bad. So note that we have all the space for the diagram. So there's no need for a toolbar or a properties view or anything. I just want to do everything inside the diagram. Okay, this is what I want to do as a user. I don't want to switch between different representations all the time. I can show you later on how to connect that, for example, to a textual language. All right, so what can I do? I can, of course, move the mouse around. And what happens if I enter a node is it gets that kind of, I don't know if you see that, inner shadow. I can make that a bit bigger. That inner shadow, this is just kind of feedback. You're over that node. That's a one-liner in JavaFX. You wouldn't be able to do anything of that with Jeff. And this is what it's all about. Okay, you find some kind of neat effects, smoothness, haptic experience. So what is the next haptic experience? I select that node. And it comes off, it's like lifted up from the desktop. Well, in fact, not. It's just a bit bigger, and it gets a shadow. But that's a metaphor, okay? Your users have the impression that everything is lying on the desktop, and you can take something up and move it somewhere else. And if it's on the desktop, it sticks, so it doesn't move. And this is a far better metaphor than putting a border around something and have handles to resize things and that stuff. So you don't need that, okay? You need something users understand. And you need something that's fun to use. And this is actually very much fun to use. And I'll show you a lot more. Okay, next thing I can do, I can move a node, of course. And yeah, have you ever used Jeff, GMF, Graffiti? Do you know what happens when you move a node in Graffiti? Nothing. So there's a gray box. If you're lucky, someone put another figure instead of the gray box, and that gray box is moved. And when you drop it, the connections are restored and rerouted. That's not what you want, okay? This is not the experience a user expects. This is like, I mean, these are connected, so why should the connection be lost when I just move it? It shouldn't. Okay, so this should be all reactive and happen in time, all the routing live. That's important for a good user experience. All right, so I can move nodes, great deal. And you saw, another thing is, I have a very strong emphasis on smooth experience, okay? Smooth means everything should be like really smooth. The movement is really smooth. And on top of that, I have a Mac. I love my Mac, and the Mac has a big touch board down here, okay? Touchpad. And that is multi-touch aware. And in fact, Mac applications use that all over the time. So I can use multi-touch gestures, like scroll with 2 fingers on my tab. I can magnify using a magnify gesture. And I can even, if I want to, I can rotate, okay? And everything's smooth. Yeah, you may smile now that this is not so important, but what's actually the fact is when I programmed this stuff, I spent so much time just testing without any results, but just playing with that I almost forgot to program new features, you know, because it was so much fun. It felt like I'm moving the things that are on the screen. That's great. You know, it's like the experience of a touchpad, of a tablet. All right, so what else can I do? You see the labels here on the connections. The labels are aligned with the, how do you call it? With the tangent of the connection. This is, by the way, a very good idea for all diagram editors because it saves a lot of screen real estate. Imagine you have like 15 nodes coming into this one, 15 connections coming into this one, each having a label. You have a problem of placing the labels without the lines crossing through, okay? But if you align them with a connection, you save a lot of space, and you get much later into that situation. And it's, the names say it, so this is a cubic spline, there's a quadratic spline, and there's a polyline. Polyline is the simple default, okay? A cubic spline is a cubic Bezier spline. And that's built into JavaFX, the Bezier splines. There's a problem with Bezier splines. If you know Bezier splines, they have control points to modify them. And a control point is not really interpolated. It's somehow modifying the curve, but it's kind of hard to understand how that actually works. So there seems to be no good metaphor for that. But everyone knows about magnets and magnetism. So why not just render the control points as magnets? And it becomes immediately intuitive. Oh, sorry, I lost focus here. Immediately intuitive to take such a magnet and move it. And of course, the magnet just kind of modifies the curve. All right? So this is, you don't have to write any user documentation on such a feature. Okay? It's immediately understandable. Okay. Good, so what else do I want to show you? Yeah, there's no menu or something. Well, there is, but it's actually hidden, so it pops in when I need it. And of course, it's graphical as well. So this is actually stolen, okay? This is from Gerrit Grunwald's Enzo project, another open source project. And also, gives me the opportunity to say that there is a huge JavaFX community which does open source things where you can really, you're not on your own there. So many things already exist, so why not reuse them? In this case, this is this circular menu with a bit of animation. And it gives me access to certain functions. So I definitely should kind of replace these icons because some of them are not very intuitive. But actually, there are always actions behind all of these. So what are the actions? This one will center the diagram and rescale it to factor 1. Then, as opposed to this, there is this one that will like fill the whole screen with the diagram. Okay, it touches here. This is why it doesn't have to touch there. I can center again. And I have also key bindings for that, so I don't want to bore you with that menu thing all the time. But you see, oops, I left the full screen mode. Sorry. Okay. You see that that's all smooth. So if I center the diagram or if I move it, make it bigger, this is all smooth. And this is not like to make it a design thing, like look good or whatever. This is to guide the user's eye. Okay. If you have a big change in the diagram, like changing everything at once, you want to guide the user's eye. You don't want it to flicker. You don't want it to flash into a new state. Okay? The user should have control of the diagram and it needs to see what's going on. So these transitions are really, really important. Okay, you see these transitions in another place too. So a very common concept of diagrams is nesting. So diagrams and diagrams and diagrams. So a node contains another diagram. I have two examples here. How to do that? One is based on level of detail. So I can zoom in, and as soon as it gets big enough, I see the inner diagram. And of course, it's a diagram. It can be modified the same way. And the second one is based on an animation. So I can double-click on that. I can double-click on that. OK. And it has that transition to the inner diagram. So I know I'm guided, like, OK, I'm now digging into that node. And I can get out again by pushing that get out button here, the zoom out button. OK. So this is much better than opening a new diagram with a new content and flashing, and the user doesn't know where he is. OK. So this is all about usability. All right, what else do I have? I have, of course, many frameworks have that, these alignment lines. So if two nodes are aligned, here center, left, or right, you get these guiding lines. And this is very helpful to arrange nodes. So once again, no need for an action like center everything, drop it to top, whatever. It's good to have graphical metaphors for everything. Good. So what I'm particularly interested in is not diagram editors to modify some kind of underlying model, but I want to create views for an underlying model. So for example, take the example of an editor to explore your Java code, or your Xtext-based DSL thing, or your EMF model, or whatever you have. So the problem here is that you cannot show everything in such a diagram. Your entire Java code base in a diagram doesn't make sense, but you just want to show a selection of things. So you have to choose from some candidates. What most frameworks offer you here is a dialog or a tree view browser to drag and drop. But if it's just a couple of things, you can also think about doing that graphically in the diagram. Why not? So here is how to add some candidate. Okay, this is a small chooser, a spinner, if you want so. It's also a multi-touch base, so I can scroll through. Okay, and I can select from a number of nodes. And of course, these are a lot of nodes, so I only want to see the ones that have a 2 in it. So I type 2, it's very small here, down here. A filter expression, and it matches everything that has the 2 in it, so I can use this one. Okay, it's a graphical metaphor for choosing candidates, for choosing connections. Of course, once you have that idea, you can make that in different fashions. Okay, I have here, this is a 3D effect. Everything's projected on a cube. Okay, so this is one. And if you're on a Mac, you may be used to this kind of cover flow thing. All right, so this is easy to do with JavaFX because everything's built in. The effects are built into the framework. The transitions, the ability to animate simple 3D things, that's all baked into JavaFX. You don't have to use it, but you can. So you have a very mighty toolbox. OK, and you may want to relay out that diagram. Let's do that. I'm using an open source project here from the University of Kiel, which in fact uses GraphViz in the background, so this is why it's a bit slow. But there's always that transition thing, you know? No flashing, make a transition. Even GMF does a transition when relayouting diagrams. Okay, do you have more? Let's have a look. I'll show you a couple of things later on. Yeah. Oops, sorry. If I press escape, I'm leaving full screen mode, so I should have maybe practiced a bit more. Yeah, so how about Undoredo? Have you ever thought about Undoredo in a diagram editor? Maybe not. So what is actually the purpose of undo and redo? The purpose is that the user gets back to a point in time where he did a specific change to the diagram and take another route, okay? So Undoredo should support the user to find the point in time to identify the state to which he wants to go back. And what does that mean? I mean, we are all visual people, so that means the best thing we could do is to restore the viewport to the state where the user was when he did that particular change. So I'll give you an example. I know that this happened when the embedded node was right here. My change happened, so I add something. Yeah, I move away, and I want to undo this. So I'm going back there to the state where that was, and then undo the operation. And this is also not flickering. This is animated. So all my commands internally are animations that can be animated forward and backward. So I can really press Ctrl-Z, and you see all the actions undone that I did. And that involves navigation, that involves selection and this stuff. And I can go forth again. And of course, once you have these things in place, you can have a kind of diagram player, okay? That will place all my changes forward and backward again. Okay, this is like a toy thing, the player, I must admit. But having the transitions in undo redo, I guess that's very, very valuable. This is something you should really keep in mind when you want to do graphical editing. Good. So this is about the basic usability things, but I have more. Somehow that one doesn't want to go back today. I don't know. I restarted. Doesn't matter. Live demo. I run a high risk here. Okay. So let me give you a bit of an example on what you can do with JavaFX. So in Eclipse, you have that kind of break between draw2D and SWT. So you're either on a canvas or you're in a component, whatever, SWT widget, but you cannot come back. That's not the case in JavaFX. So you can have entire dialogues or whatever things, windows, tables, whatever, right inside the diagram because it's just widgets. There's no difference between my nodes and other widgets. They can be nested in any way. So you can, for example, use that like I do here with a bit of a transition, okay, to log in to your whatever thing within the diagram, or to like edit a node, like go to the edit thing, edit side, and then put in all the values and take it back. We have double coordinates all over the place, so I can do these things like these infinite zooms. So I hope you're not getting nauseous. So this is also very smooth, easily done with JavaFX. So no integer coordinates with rounding errors and that stuff. I can play movies right inside my diagram. Like this one, I like that most. This is from StarTrek. You know that scene? It says they're going back to 1980, and Scotty should enter something into the computer, and he takes the mouse and says, "Computer." No, you have to use the keyboard. Keyboard input, how quaint, he says. I love that. I think that's a good metaphor for that talk as well. So you can embed a browser. That won't work because, oh, it works. I have Wi-Fi. Interesting. So this is a web page. And there's a demo game coming with JavaFX Brick Breaker, so you can play that right within the editor if you want to. So this is the toy thing. But you see, it's all integrated. It works well. So think more about Xtend. I mean, I have to say something. So this is an example to show you how good Xtend matches JavaFX. So we have a simple thing here. It's a box with a background. We have a text box on top, and you see it's the input box just synchronizes with the text that's shown below there. So there's data binding in place. And yeah, this is a special font, and it's turned, and it has an effect. And it even has a small animation. When I click on it, it kind of has that neon flickering effect. So how much code do you think would that be in JavaFX? That's not much if you use Xtend, actually. So I can show you. It fits on this screen. This is the entire code for this. And it reads like exactly what's going on. So there's no line that is unnecessary. We have a VBox. That means the text and the second text, they're just in vertical fashion aligned. It has a background. There's just the text input field. It has a default text. It has margins to place it. There's the neon text. And it binds the value of the text input fields as the text it shows. So a single liner for the entire data binding. And you set a couple of properties like rotation, text alignment, and stuff. So there's nothing you don't need. And you see a bit the structure. So this is the VBox, and it has a child here, and this has another child, and that has an effect. So you really see the tree. Because in Xtend, I can nest these things, which are lambda expressions, and use the with operator. So this is maybe a bit too much for this talk. But that is especially good for doing some things like that. And then you can have things like extension methods. So here I'm decorating the integer class with another method, millis. And that one returns a duration, because the keyframe expects a duration. Okay. So all these nice little tricks I'm using here can really make a very readable and very good code, and very precise. So I don't have to write really much. And in fact, this down here, this is the animation. I did it complicated with keyframes because I wanted to look a bit irregular. Okay, so this is not much code, given for what you see here. I mean, this is like very straightforward, very object-oriented. And Xtend match is very good. I guess using Xtend was really an enabler in this project. Okay, StarTrek. I already picked StarTrek. Who knows what LCARS is? LCARS, anyone? Library Computer Access Retrieval System. This is the content management system in the StarTrek universe. So I wanted to create a diagram editor that looks all different. So I designed this one. Okay, if you have ever looked Star Trek Next Generation, this is how every user interface on the Starship Enterprise looks like, more or less. Well, I posted that, and of course, a lot of people were answering my blog. No, it's not exactly like that. And, you know, people know very well about Star Trek. So yeah, so this should show you that a diagram editor doesn't necessarily be just these nodes and edges and dull and stupid, but the nodes, in fact, they can be mini applications. So this is a mini application. It actually queries the database and can show, I make it bigger, can show several kinds of information on that specific person, and I can switch pictures. So this is really a mini application. But it's of course, not yet a diagram. So what I can do now is I query the database for other mail people by right-clicking on that mail. And I get proposals. Okay, I should have maybe made that a bit smaller. It's too late now. Okay, so I'm choosing Picard. And I get a new node for that one, and it gets connected with a gender connection because they have the same gender. All right, so I can now go on, create another thing, maybe a human. Look for Scotty, okay. And then I can say, oh, well, who else is, for example, make that bigger. Is there another captain? Well, at some point in time, Scotty was a captain, so that's the maximum rank here. So are there other captains in the diagram? Can I connect them? And I do so by just clicking on that. And I get these connections, and they are morphed, and then nothing happens, no surprises, no flickering. So this is all smooth, right? And a bit running out of time, I guess. The entire thing can be exported as SWG, so in vector format. It's very important. That doesn't come with JavaFX by default, but I can scale that result as big as I want without using losing any of the precision. And it still looks sharp and all that stuff. So this is very important, I guess. OK, last topic is Xtext views. I'm a committer to the Xtext project. Who knows Xtext? OK. So Xtext is about domain-specific languages. Write your own program language. And of course, with Java, with Eclipse. And we have 2 example languages here. This is one for state machines. Okay, state machines, that's a typical example where you want to have a graphical view on, because there are these transitions between states. And you see them here. The connection actually happens on a textual level. And that's not very good to highlight which elements are actually highlighted, connected to each other. So you want a graphical view. So I integrated JavaFX here in a view. And I can click on this state and say, show it in the diagram, and it will render the entire state machine for me and select that node and center it. OK, now I can, this is exactly the same framework. I can do all the things you have seen. But I can also navigate back. So I can say, oh, where was this in my code? Where's this? And see how that is like changing the selection. OK, that will even reopen the editor if it has been closed. This one. OK. So yeah, it's actually quite easy once you have such a framework in place to make such a mapping. And of course, you can use that for discovery as well. Here's another language that's about an object model. So I want to show that specific entity here in my diagram. I can do it in the same diagram. There's no problem. And kind of explore like the surroundings of this entity with all the metaphors you have seen. OK, like add this relationship. A company has employees, and these are persons. And now you can like document your models from your DSL and print that or put that on your blog or whatever. Okay, so this is what I target as a use case. All right. So far, so good. That's the major part of the demo. Do I have more time? No, not really. I have just a few closing slides. OK, what's my conclusion? My conclusion is that the current diagram frameworks in Eclipse don't help you to build these really user-centric editors. So if you're like picky like me, if you have these high requirements like I do, these ones won't keep you warm. They give you a head start. You get to results very easily. You get a lot of features. And in the end, find out that you either don't need some of these features, or that they don't match your use case, or that the entire framework doesn't match the use case. And then all the higher level abstractions are useless because you have to dig down in the details. If you're lucky, you can change that. If you're unlucky, you can't. So if you instead use a state-of-the-art graphics engine like JavaFX, and that's not the only one that's available, you could also look at, for example, Piccolo or other rendering engines, and combine it with a powerful programming language that really makes it easy to write the things you want to write. Then you can take back the control of the quality and the usability of the tools you're building. And that's so important because we should all target the users, not other developers. And you can build diagram editors that really make a dent in the universe. So that's all here. A few thanks to people and organizations, projects I credited a bit in my talk. So I hope I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for your attention. And now enjoy lunch and the rest of the conference. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.